I'm Dr. Lisa Colledge. Welcome to Culture by Neurodesign. Today I'm continuing to illustrate different cognitive styles, thinking styles, and how it's so important to have a mix of them when you have a team or an organization that needs to respond confidently to change. I'm going to dive into how traits that are often associated with ADHD, traits that might be misunderstood, are actually crucial in enabling a more innovative, resilient ways of working in fast-moving environments. So you'll see me talking through the results of a fascinating peer-reviewed paper that was published by a researcher called David Barak together with some colleagues. Now, as you may be able to see if you're watching on YouTube or here, if you're in the gym or in the car or wherever, I'm recovering from a cold and I'm losing my voice. So for most of today's episode, I'm connecting directly to a recording that I made last year. So you'll notice a change of clothing and a change of hairstyle in a moment when I start talking about the research focus of the researchers. Hello.
Those researchers had been looking at the character traits that were associated with survival in conditions of scarcity. Right, so what they had done was to create a computer program which mimicked an environment in which there was a limited amount of food. So the food was berries on bushes, and the person who was participating in the research, they had to forage online in an environment for 2 minutes and find as many berries as they possibly could. So what did that mean? It meant that they started at a berry bush, and the berry bush was replete with berries, full of berries, and they stayed at the berry bush, and the berries depleted. They virtually ate the berries, right? And then they had to decide, do I stay at this berry bush and wait for the berries to regrow, knowing that they won't regrow to quite the amount that they were at when I first got to this berry bush, but they'll regrow, mix them again? Or do I go and look for a different berry bush, which would be full of more berries and so on? So they had to make this call. They had to make this balance between staying at a location where I know that there are berries. Okay, I have to wait for a bit for them to grow, and there won't be so many, but there will be berries. And going to somewhere new, what you didn't know where it was yet. And what the researchers checked was, how many berries each person found when they were doing their 2-minute trials in this virtual environment. After the trials, the researchers also asked people to complete a survey which would help them to associate the results with traits of ADHD. So this was a self-reported survey which people filled in, and I have to be clear, it wasn't a diagnosis of ADHD. The researchers were looking for traits associated with ADHD, right? So it may be that those people had an ADHD diagnosis, it may be that they were close, it may be that they had some of the characteristics, but that the diagnosis wasn't really important for this research. So let's get to the results. What the researchers predicted was that people with more traits of ADHD would not stay at each berry bush for very long. And that's indeed what they saw, because it's, as is well known, people with ADHD tend to zip around more quickly between topics or activities or things. It's also what they saw with the berry bushes. And the researchers predicted that this was less optimal behaviour that would result in fewer berries being collected. And what they found was that they were wrong. So the people with ADHD ADHD traits who participated in this trial were the ones who did best. They got the most berries, the highest rewards. Right? Yes, they did leave each berry bush most quickly, but they intuitively seemed to sense at which point they needed to leave the berry bushes before they got so depleted that they weren't really collecting very many berries anymore, and much better at knowing when to go to the next berry bush. So that behaviour that we know is associated with ADHD of moving around much more quickly between things in an environment where you need to forage to survive, that's a really massive benefit. So those people are much better able than people with lower or no ADHD traits to know when it's time to move on and look for something new. So imagine that in your organisation, having people with those kind of character traits saying, okay, we're not making virtual berry bushes for our customers, but we're making some products that they value, and I think it's time that I went and had a look at something else. The resistance to trying out something new is much lower than people with lower ADHD traits. Now that paper was about a tendency to leave patches, right? It wasn't really about the tendency to search. The computer program did the searching for the person. All they had to say was, I want to leave the berry bush, and then the computer program would give them some penalty in terms of a time delay before they got to their new berry bush and could eat more berries. So that research didn't say anything about the searching strategy that the people with ADHD traits or few ADHD traits used. And after I read that new paper, I wanted to find out what the searching strategy was like. So I located another research paper. It was published in 2019, and that was by Charlotte van den Driesche. Hopefully I've said her name correctly. Also working with other researchers. And they looked at a group of children, 9-year-old children, not adults, as the first paper had done. And again, they were looking at traits of ADHD, evaluated this time because it was children by their parents and their teachers. They were looking at the searching strategy. So the children had to do two things. They were asked, first of all, to find all the silhouettes of bells that they could find on a piece of paper, right? So they had white paper, black silhouettes of all different shapes, and some of them were bells and some of them were distractors. And they had to find as many bells as they possibly could on that piece of paper in 2 minutes. The second thing that the children had to do was to search their memory, not to search something physical, but to search their memory. And they were asked to name as many different animals as they could possibly name, just by thinking about it. What the researchers found, let's say, first of all, with the bells, the children with the higher ADHD traits found the same number of bells as the children with no ADHD traits. But the really interesting thing is that their searching journey was much more convoluted. They took a much longer route between bells. And so in principle, you can imagine in the wild, you would be able to find by chance different things as you were doing that searching strategy. And that's the kind of behavior that will help you to have ideas and be original. With the animals, the children with high traits of ADHD actually named more animals, more unique animals. But there was a cost, so they also repeated animals that they had named before. They seem not to be so good at remembering. I've already said a giraffe or an elephant or whatever, but they just said it again. But the result was that they could name more animals. All right, so that's the end of the two papers that I wanted to talk about. So what does this tell us about people with traits of ADHD? And now I'm going to say let's think about it really in terms of our work environment, of our organisations. People with traits of ADHD probably feel a little bit messy, a little bit disorganised in how they're doing things, right? Because they are quite quick to leave something that's known and go and try something new. And maybe if that's not our cognitive style, our thinking style, it looks like it's a little bit random and all over the place how these people with ADHD traits are working or are contributing. But look at the results of those papers, right? In the worst case scenario, that behaviour doesn't have any negative impact, right? The number of bells that those children found was the same as the children without or with lower ADHD traits. The best case scenario for those searching strategies is actually better. So if people with ADHD traits are looking for something, like they're looking for berries on bushes, they do better than people who search in a more conventional and structured and careful way. And also when they're searching their memories, yeah, okay, it's a bit messy. They've got some repetition of the giraffes and the elephants or whatever animals it was. But the outcome is better, right? They can find more examples of unique animals in their memories than others. So there are certainly really beneficial traits associated with ADHD style of thinking that you should want in your organization if you want to be innovative, if you want to be resilient in how you respond to change that you're finding in the world around you. The paper that I wrote is about evolution. Right, now let me bring it back to why I titled the paper Evolution. So if you think about the process of innovation, of course you need an idea at the beginning of it. And the ADHD traits are really, really good at finding new information that will help an idea come to light. You can imagine that very vigorous searching and active searching is not so well suited to sitting down and making a plan and sticking to the plan and telling the same message to 50 people because you want them to come along with you on the plan and participate and move in the same direction. And maybe it's also not so well suited to actually sticking with the plan through to the end. Those traits are also really important in terms of innovation, because if you don't have them, of course, you're not going to build anything, you're not going to provide any value to your customers. And they are traits that are more associated with different styles of thinking, right? But you need the mix, that's the point. You need the mix of cognitive styles, and you need to enable that mix in a good environment where everybody can contribute their best in order to get the benefit. One last word about these fantastic traits of ADHD. So you can imagine that if somebody with these traits is able to work in a way where they can explore freely and they have the flexibility to dig into ideas that they've thought about, and they're also not constrained by a lot of structure and process, that they're going to deliver very good results for you, right? And they're also going to be mentally very healthy because they're working in a way that their brains are evolutionarily primed for. Their contribution to the success of humankind in the world is to be brilliant at searching, right? So if they're able to work in that way in your organization, they're going to be mentally healthy, happy, and giving their best results to you. In a team, hopefully in a team which is innovative, you don't only have people with traits of ADHD, because you're going to have loads of ideas, but not really very much outcome which you can deliver to customers. So you also need people who I mentioned who are very good at planning, very systematic, very calm, who can evaluate ideas and all of those sort of things. And probably, or maybe you have experience yourself, or otherwise you can imagine that there's a bit of friction between those different styles of working. Somebody who likes to bing around and have loads of ideas is not a natural fit at working with somebody who likes to make and stick to plans, for example. Of course, people with those different traits can learn to work together, but it's not necessarily something that is going to happen on its own, especially if people are busy when these things tend to fall away.
As I said, fascinating research. To wrap up, it's clear that embracing different cognitive styles, including the traits associated quite often with ADHD, can really strengthen your organization's ability to adapt and to innovate. These diverse strengths can help to uncover fresh opportunities and build resilience in dynamic, ever-changing environments. But resilience and innovation don't just happen by accident. They emerge, or they are created, when organizations build a cognitively inclusive culture where people's strengths, even the less conventional strengths, are recognized and celebrated. So as you think about your own teams, here's a few questions to ask yourself. Am I doing everything I can to leverage the strengths of the varied cognitive approaches in my team? Am I making sure that people who are innately different from each other in what they contribute and in how they contribute, that they value each other's differences instead of resisting each other's differences? Am I making sure that my team members have the skills to connect with each other, to reinforce and complement each other, so that I create a working environment where people feel safe and able to contribute their unique value? If this episode gave you some new insights, some food for thought, then please share it with a colleague or friend who would benefit from the perspective that I've been sharing. It's a really great way to help to spread the word about the importance of a cognitively inclusive working culture. Thanks so much for listening.